DNVR Draft Pod brought to you from the Toyota Lounge, Toyota, Front Range Toyota stores, Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR, a true Colorado car through and through. I'm here with a true Colorado guy through and through, a man who would never leave me by my lonesome on a show, and I can always count on. It's just J Mike and I. Toyota chat popping already. I see Nick with the question. Wait, we're talking 2020. So, Draft Pod, we do this weekly. We're going a little early because the Broncos guys are actually busy at Dove Valley right now. They'll be coming to you at 2. We are doing all things draft. It's just the future of college football is what of football really is what this podcast is about. College football to pros, everything in between. And yeah, we're still recapping the draft and having some fun with that.
We're the guys that were on a podcast talking about Bo Nix in 2019. So
we sure were.
This is what we do.
Facts, yes. We've been through a lot of ups and downs with Bo throughout his whole college career, all his coaches. We know them all, man. The best wide receivers he's thrown the ball to. We are locked in and familiar with it all. Obviously, we've done a lot of Broncos recap stuff. We've done a lot of AFC West recap last week. We had a lot of fun with that. But as we talk about team building, as we try to assess the Broncos draft, it helps best to compare it to what other teams in the league are doing, the teams who are succeeding and maybe not succeeding so much. So that's what we're really taking our time to get into on this episode. And beyond our favorite and least favorite draft, you know, there's always some picks we feel vindicated by, right? I think we must have been the only draft podcast in America that wasn't completely shocked by the Michael Penix pick.
Well, I mean, you made good money on that.
I made good money on it, so I've got that going for us. Also, shout out to James Palmer, who's here every week on the DNVR Broncos pod, and broke that news basically on the podcast because a report came out from one of the other insiders like the next day, but it was James on this here show in this studio. You got to be locked in every day. It's why our network is fantastic. But anyways, there's always some picks you feel vindicated by, picks you maybe feel like, I guess it turns out I was too high on that guy. Or was I? Only time will tell with the draft. It's a beautiful thing, but that's kind of our theme is, you know, the NFL, team building, and building a draft class at large. And if you'll indulge me, I wouldn't mind starting with some negatives. A few draft classes that maybe you and I saw as a bit of a letdown.
Should add that we talked AFC West in depth last week. So if you missed that one, go back and check that out.
Please
a lot
do.
of this similar conversations that we're having today, but more in depth because, I mean, it's the Broncos, it's our universe, all that fun stuff. Just want to make sure I talked about that. But one of the teams that we talked about, one of the teams that I didn't love, despite the fact that I love the players that they drafted, is the Raiders. And I don't feel like they're any closer to being a competitive football team. I understand the argument of taking a player, you know, of that caliber, Brock Bowers. I mean, falling to you at 13, he could have gone top 5 with his talent.
Yeah.
That said, with what this team has done, compounded on top of what they've done the last couple years, I just don't really understand it. Like, I love Jackson Powers-Johnson. I love Brock Bowers. I don't understand what their identity is. I don't understand what their draft strategy is. I don't understand what they're building towards. Maybe they're just punting and trying to get the number 1 pick next year. And if that's the case, you know, you just add a couple of these things and all of a sudden you've got an elite tight end for your future quarterback.
Right.
But
2, in fact.
I didn't love it. I thought they should have moved up and tried to make a move for a quarterback. I'm with you, and I think they were all in on Penix and hoping that he fell to them.
I mean,
but I don't like what the Raiders did.
I think that's a great one and a great one to kind of start this off with. We couldn't figure out, were they an order of business draft or were they running your errands, an identity draft rather. And I think Michael Lombardi, their former GM, someone who worked under Al Davis, had some great analysis and commentary on this. He talked about how Al Davis would be rolling in his grave on this draft. Al Davis was always looking at the AFC West and how can we get better than our rivals? And Lombardi was asking the question, how did they get better? How did they close the gap on Kansas City? You have Max Crosby who's given Mahomes some trouble. You're adding Christian
Wilkins.
Wilkins, thank you. You had the best defender in the entire draft available to you. Byron Murphy pressuring up the middle with Wilkins. The best edge in the class.
You had your pick of the defensive class. Like you could have gotten defensive player 1 at 13.
Right. And I mean, glaring needs at quarterback, right tackle, cornerback 2. You're not addressing any of those with your top 2 picks. You're drafting an undersized tight end, an undersized center. You're going to convert the center to guard. The tight end, you drafted Michael Mayer last year in a top 35. So this tight end is going to be your flex tight end, like basically a luxury pick. I just think you look at the board. I had those guys ranked highly too, Bowers and JPJ. I like them.
Well, it's not an indictment of who they are as football players. It's what does bringing them in actually do for us as a team right now. And it feels like wasted capital if you're actually trying to get more competitive. And maybe, they have a strategy that we're just not seeing. We got some people in the Toyota chat saying it's too early to grade the draft. And I understand where you're coming from.
Certainly is.
Yeah, it's really, it's further projection. These are based off of conversations from the last couple of years and how you kind of expect all of this to play out. I understand that a couple of years from now.
What we're really trying to get into is more of a grader process, more of a draft approach. What is your checklist going into taking care of the draft, right? Like every NFL team has the opportunity of 7 draft picks and needs to come out of this objectively having upgraded their team. That's the mission, man. That's what the draft and the cap and this whole structure allows for, is every team to start things off is going to get 7 picks, and based on their regular season, actually in the NFL, it's postseason performance as well, you will be assigned a number of pick for each round, and then you're kind of allotting that arsenal of draft picks. You're making trades and what have you, but the mandate is every team has the ability to get better and younger every single offseason. And are you doing that? Are you accomplishing that goal? How are you going about that? What are some of the cheat codes in the draft, and what are some of the shortcomings where you're kind of letting the draft get the better of you? That's what we're really trying to get to. Thinking about this at a higher level, more intellectually. I have gotten to a point in my career and as a draft, not even analyst, just an observer and fan, where some of the other podcasts and how they go about grading the draft can be very just not thinking outside of themselves. And that's what we're trying to do here. It's like, if we in these front office evaluator shoes, how are you going about this? What are effective ways to build a winner, and what are not such effective ways? And my hope is that someday we can get to the bottom of what has failed the Broncos over the last several years and what has worked and will work for them to turn this around.
Having these types of conversations allow you to understand in a broader sense of, like, sometimes sports are really simple. It's just winning and losing. Like, you have tangible results.
Correct.
You also have tangible results in terms of whether players pan out or not. Like, you're either going to be successful or you're not. But every decision isn't black and white. And if you can understand the process that led up to a decision, to me, it's a lot like quarterbacks and interceptions. Not all interceptions are the same. Like, if you just see an interception and you, oh man, that was a bad decision. Was it though? It might have actually been the right decision. There's a variety of things that led up and caused him to make that decision. It obviously didn't pan out the way that you hoped. But I just mean there's a lot more that goes into this than I like this player, I don't like this player. It's, fundamentally, what are you trying to accomplish as an organization? Do you have any type of clear blueprint, or are you just seemingly going whichever way the wind blows you, which I think there are teams in all sports that operate that way, that don't seem to have a clear, concise, plan of operation. And that's just kind of what we're diving into. But yeah, I like the players that the Raiders landed with those top 2 picks in terms of like, are they football players that I like? Do I feel like they pan out at the next level? I don't understand what you're accomplishing fundamentally. I don't understand what your vision for the future is with this team.
100%. And I mean,
whereas I feel like the Chargers, you know, it's like maybe not as sexy, but you can see exactly what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I thought in some ways the Broncos were like that as well.
Same too. Agreed.
You know, where like off my rankings, maybe, especially the first 2 picks aren't like absolute slam dunks. But I see a method to the madness. I see a fit. I see a path to getting those guys extra snaps. And it's also like a philosophy of attacking premier positions. Offensive guard, offensive center, tight end, those aren't premier positions. What they're lacking is premier positions. Quarterback, cornerback, offensive tackle. The foundation of a football team.
The most important pieces of the puzzle.
Let's stay in the Bay Area right now, J-Mike, because for years I keep being critical of the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch pairing in that front office. On the field, I must admit, they have made it happen, whether it's with clever trades for Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, among others, whether it's been the phenomenal selection of Brock Purdy, who, look, it's not just the draft pick, it's how they've developed and fit him into that system. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. There's been some great picks. And yet, I also think for a team that's been this good, there are several instances that I can point out where they just left massive opportunities on the table and would probably already be a dynasty by now if picks like Solomon Thomas had been nailed. If picks like Mike McGlinchey had been nailed. You know, we're talking about guys in the Mahomes and Josh Allen draft, for example.
How
and
much
Trey
water?
Lance trade.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, yes, you get all the props for landing on Brock Purdy. Congrats. But, man, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of offsetting what was one of the worst draft decisions, you know, in the last 5-6 years.
No doubt. And, I mean, that's still, I mean, we could do a whole episode on the reports that they made that trade wanting to draft Mac Jones and how all the internal conversation, like, I really think that trade was made initially with one idea and then they went through their evaluation and came to a different conclusion. Not a worse process possible than that one. And, you know, they're lauded like the Ricky Pearsall pick. Everyone's like, oh, well, Kyle knows his wide receivers. Look at what they've done about wide receivers. I just mentioned a couple wide receivers, right? In Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. And yet there are instances of this Lynch-Shanahan tenure where they've gone after wide receivers that just have not panned out and not made any sense at all. Danny Gray, 3rd rounder, 105th pick. Remember him out of SMU? He's kind of like, I have him on a couple of dynasty teams. He's useless at this point. Remember when they got the guy who broke all the records for Washington, Dante Pettis, in the early 2nd round?
I forgot they took him in the 2nd.
44th overall. That's in the McGlinchey draft. Now, he's sandwiched between McGlinchey and Fred Warner. Those were pretty good picks. But, like, where is Dante Pettis? Anyone know?
Probably the UFL.
Yeah, like, he is. And, you know,
selling
this
insurance,
was,
maybe?
What, the record breaker for punt returns in NCAA history? I mean, if you bought the yak ability, but I remember I was very critical of both those picks. Ricky Pearsall, intriguing pick just before Xavier Legette. After guys
there
like Xavier
are guys
Worthy.
that just play the position better. I understand the talking yourself into his upside. Like, he runs really well. He's got a catch radius that's pretty solid. But there are just guys that get open better, that run more complete route trees, that are more versatile.
I actually have
I'm not big on
full
Pearsall.
5 minutes to do on Pearsall, the former Arizona State, so I'm going to take a quick break.
Do it.
We're talking about draft bets, and no better place to make your bets than Bet365, where I, as J-Mike mentioned, made a nice little chunk of change on some draft props at the end of April. Sadly, my Nuggets futures won't end up hitting, but I was seeing got the opportunity to 20x my profits, bring in 20 units when McKinnon wins the Hart, assuming that happens. Connor Bedard winning Rookie of the Year for the NHL would actually be huge for us. Or for me, rather. I parlayed that with Wembanyama to win Rookie of the Year. There's always these fun opportunities in the offseason with futures. And right now, win totals. Rams, maybe fade the Buffs, J-Mike. I think the Buffs hit their number as well. Rapids. Dude, Austin Gomber under 2.5 earned runs yesterday. Cha-ching. I was also in on the Mavs. I knew that was happening. And I lost the bet on Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever to win yesterday. I'm not deterred. I'll be back again. Bet365. It's giving me life again in the offseason, locked in and ready to go. The only place you can get DNVR custom bets. The only place you can use our code DNVR365. Sign up and then get $150 in bonus bets once you've placed a $5 minimum bet or more. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And then, of course, shout out to Raising Cane's.
Raising Cane's, man. Call me Augie Farks because I'm going for these chicken fingers, man.
Dang,
that's a Role Models reference for those of you that are old enough to get it. On your mark, get set, eat, make a pit stop at Raising Cane's for craveable hand-battered chicken fingers. They're always cooked to order, made just for you. For cooked-to-order hand-battered chicken fingers, race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers. Get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through their mobile app. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love. And if you don't mind, highly recommend get yourself some extra Texas toast, get some sauce on there, and make yourself a little Sammy undefeated. I might have to hit Raising Cane's up on the way home. Sounds pretty good.
Dude, that actually sounds amazing. If I can get a hold of Allie before that, I might just do it. Our area here by the bar needs more Raising Cane's.
All areas need more Raising Cane's.
Oh my God, what a great point.
Just spread the chicken fingers, spread the love.
Create a sim society that's just Raising
Cane's.
Great point that we won't be able to get into, but maybe this is a super fun offseason in the Toyota chat. Kudobia says, no way is the Broncos trade worse than the Dallas Herschel Walker trade and then the Trey Lance trade, and not worse than the Watson trade. That'd be great to get into.
It'd be interesting to go through that. And
I've just accepted that the Russ trade's like the worst in Denver sports history,
but you would
NFL
but
history,
you would make it. Everyone would make that decision. Like, it's in hindsight, yes, it didn't work out, but like everyone would have made that decision.
It's not a bad point. Back to the 49ers and their bad decisions and trades. Ricky Pearsall from Florida, former ASU. He's
One
got
of many former ASU guys that's somehow in the league now.
No kidding, including Antonio Pierce. Like everyone got the glow up except for Herm Edwards. I think like everyone's doing better off
AP
than they
was
were.
on that staff, wasn't?
Yeah, he was like the hot recruiter.
The
Also,
30 for 30 on Arizona State that'll come out in about the next 5 years is
glorious. It's going to be glorious. You're right. Pearsall has the size, route running, decent hands, look good at the combine. Honestly, though, when you stack them up, Luke McCaffrey taken at the end of the third checks off all those same boxes, man. And he was taken ahead of Xavier Legette, Adonai Mitchell.
I like Leggett. I like Mitchell better. Troy Franklin. I could name 10 receivers who I would have rather taken with that pick. Big
time upside. You wonder how much was their hand forced into this because they're worrying about the Ayuk stuff, the Debo stuff.
I do think that's a factor in it. You're trying to fill that role in the offense.
But they didn't end up trading him, man. So, did you need that?
The 49ers are in a weird spot. They're in that position where you're about to be in cap hell with all these players.
Why they didn't re-sign McGlinchey.
Yeah. So they kind of got to win a Super Bowl this year or next year, or you probably miss your window.
That's what I'm saying, man. We talk about margins all the time. They have extended their margins tremendously by finding Fred Warner in the third, by finding Brock Purdy as a Mr. Irrelevant, right? I did say a lot of glowing stuff at the start. Debo, Ayuk as day 2 picks. But those margins are just going to dry up. You keep kind of rolling the dice and missing it. And honestly, man, it kind of reminds me of what Mike Shanahan was doing when I was a kid. Where like Jake Plummer to Jay Cutler, I don't know that front office did enough to like get out of that 8-8 rut and build something more, man. Like how many picks were wasted on like
it just kind of feels like you're
guys
jogging in place here.
Totally, man. Totally. And I mean,
like we're not getting fat. We're not getting worse, but we're not actually getting better.
And I mean, there's Renardo Green, 2nd round cornerback. I thought that was a tremendous reach. There's guys in the 3rd and 4th round at corner I liked better than him. Dominic Pooney, late 3rd, very versatile offensive lineman from Kansas, looked good at the Senior Bowl, so I see that a little more. After that, though, Jacob Cowing, late 4th, I thought he was more of
it was like a 6th, 7th round
exactly,
pick.
Exactly.
You get him in the Brendan Rice range, you feel a lot better.
Totally.
But the 4th round is just like...
Isaac Guerundo, look, fun story. Louisville back. He's got size and speed. He's a former Wisconsin running back, right? So, that intrigues
like that background. Yeah.
How many running backs have they drafted over the last several years? Like, did you really need another running back when
you've also invested legitimate capital into McCaffrey, like to get him in the trade and then obviously to sign him?
Every other year, it feels like a Tyron Davis Price from LSU's drafted, and then doesn't do anything. And Elijah Mitchell, we get excited about him, nothing happens to him. It's just like every couple years, you drafted another running back because it does feel like
every year they get the guy where it's like, yeah, I kind of liked him, but I don't know if I liked him there.
Absolutely. So, man, they keep... I honestly made this point and was critical of their draft class last year on an Italian podcast I was asked to pop on, and I got some backlash on Twitter of Niners fans arguing with me and stuff and making me seem like an idiot. But I'm doubling down, man. I don't like this class one bit. I don't think this team's doing what they need to take care of business.
Good point from Jose in the Toyota chat that 2006 Broncos draft class did have a lot of guys that McDaniels ultimately shipped out. So we maybe didn't really get to see the full vision come to fruition because you had a team operating one way, then you make the coaching change and McDaniels essentially just rips the rug out underneath 3 years worth of plans. So just worth mentioning. I thought that was an astute comment from Jose.
Totally.
Another class that I'm curious to hear your opinion on is Atlanta, because obviously I like Penix.
Yeah.
I don't understand it though after signing Cousins.
Well, that's another one, right? I brought up the Mac Jones, Trey Lance. You trade up, and then did you know what your plan was going in? Did they starting this offseason know what their plan was?
It doesn't seem...
Indications are they don't. And as someone who does a year-round podcast on the draft, I don't appreciate that.
Especially for a team that's picked in the top 10 4 consecutive. This is why you always pick 8.
No, I kind of feel like if we knew how good Michael Penix was, in November... I mean, I was a fan of him in Indiana, truth be told. In 2020, we were speaking glowingly of Michael Penix on this podcast.
No, that Indiana run in COVID was something, though.
I
feel
was
like
fun. If you're an NFL GM, one of 32 jobs, making like a healthy salary, you should have been prepared before he blew you away in a private workout. That maybe your whole offseason plan could have been laid out a bit more forward thinking in your plan for a quarterback in the immediate and beyond. I understand plenty of the arguments, wanting a plan for the future, getting bit by the last couple of years.
But you're planning for the future by adding a quarterback who's going to be 30 by the time he sees the field if Cousins plays.
The injury concerns with Cousins, right? But then there's that. And the bigger thing is...
This isn't like a 21-year-old you're going to stash and develop.
Totally, man.
He was the most NFL ready of all these guys.
It's not J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, you passed on. Cannot forget that fact.
Could have traded for Lamar.
Holy shit, that's the bigger thing. This is the organization that put out a press release
saying, we're good.
Put out a press release. No one asked you to put out a press release that you weren't going to consider Lamar Jackson in free agency, even though you are flush with cash. You did that out of your own choice that, oh no, the reigning MVP, we're all good, in a great case of collusion with the other NFL front offices and owners, by the way.
I like Raheem Morris, but like they passed on Belichick after multiple interviews too.
Oh no, and also put that news out. No, Belichick wasn't even in our final three. That's what geniuses we are. We never considered Lamar Jackson in that free agency, but by the way, we're going to draft a 25-year-old 8th overall, and we're also going to invest record-breaking guaranteed money in a guy that's coming from the Russell Wilson draft class.
After using top 10 picks on non-premium positions and back-to-back, I don't understand what you're doing.
Right.
What is the plan?
And then the last few years, Bijan Robinson, a running back,
a
top
sick
10.
running back, but
sick running back, a receiving tight end, basically a big wide receiver, top 10.
But I understand talking yourself into those guys, but just like trade down.
Like
trade
the Raiders
down.
conversation, these guys are rated pretty highly for us. We are Penix guys. You're gonna find few people in the draft media world that are higher on Penix than us. It's not an anti-Penix thing. It's you're building your team like you're a 12-year-old at Madden, and you don't just have the opportunity to pull the plug and restart.
It's a bad process.
This is real life, man. These are real fans.
Well, and you have now essentially, and I guess the hope is that with a quarterback, you are finally going to make the most out of these last couple top 10 picks. But there's a possibility that essentially next year you'll have had 3 consecutive number 8 picks, and none of them are going to be in the all-pro, even Pro Bowl conversation. I mean,
right.
I love Bijan, but Tyler Algier he averaged 5.5 yards a carry at one point. What are you doing?
Know. Talk about margins.
The decisions they're making don't make them any better. And I feel very similarly about the Raiders, where it's just it's not that I think these are bad players. I just don't understand what your process of operation is here.
No, and I mean, as you're saying, top 8 picks, all those several last 3 years. Where's their defense? Dude, if you could have...
You couldn't stop anyone.
If you had the best defense in the NFC South...
They would have won. They would have been a playoff team.
I bet you they'd probably be division champs 2 of the last 3 years.
If they had a defense, if New Orleans had an offense, both of them were just sitting there. But
And look, Penix I'm fine with. Moving up to get Rook Ororo, the Clemson defensive tackle, with the 3rd pick of the 2nd round, that's mind-boggling, my guy.
I don't get it.
Not even close to the top interior defensive lineman on the board.
And it's what's particularly frustrating about the Falcons is you're not in the AFC West. You don't have any Mahomes. That division is there for the taking. And all 4 of these teams, God. I'm sitting here Tampa Bay. I like them the best in terms of
sure
the guys they've committed to.
Right.
I can get behind that, but I'm just what are you? Do any of you want to be good? Any of you?
Ororo ends up being the 2nd highest drafted defensive tackle of the entire class.
When you still had both the guys the Rams got,
ahead of Brandon Fisk.
You could have gotten Fisk. I love that. You want to talk about a class I love?
Chris Jenkins.
The Los Angeles Rams.
There you go. Let's get into that.
You're retooling. You're going out. You lose Aaron Donald. That sucks. There's no replacing him directly.
Yeah.
But you go out and you get Jared Verse, you get Braden Fisk, and then you get Blake Corum. That might be my favorite 3-pick run of anybody in this draft, especially because the value of where they got those 3 guys.
Yeah. No, 100%. And Fisk gets a trade up, but we're analyzing just the value of the picks, and to be able to get those 2 teammates on an undefeated Florida State team.
Who play well together.
Play phenomenally well. Fisk, as far as just analyze the single trait of interior penetration, phenomenal. And we know what a key that is to winning in the modern NFL. Versus a very complete edge rusher. 3-down guy.
Well, and how good do you... I mean, where you get him at... What pick was that?
And I mean, don't mention...
19?
Verse 19th.
That's what I'm saying. If you're taking him top 8, which I think in a certain draft classes, he could be easily a top 10 pick.
Last year, right?
Yeah. It's I don't know. But at 19...
What a steal. Yeah, who's the edge rusher the Raiders took a year ago from Texas Tech? Tyree Wilson?
Yeah.
Had Jared Verse declared, I feel very certain
He's probably that pick.
he is drafted ahead of that edge rusher, and he's, a top 10 pick.
I mean, even Cam Kitchens, getting him with your 4th overall pick. Again, like I'm not crazy about him. I didn't really love anybody in this safety class, but I don't hate taking a flyer on him in the late 3rd.
Right. And it's a great, and like, as you said, you're not going to replace Aaron Donald. You're going to replace him in the aggregate, basically.
We're going Moneyball.
100%, man. I love it.
And then even like a guy like Tyler Davis, who we're 2.5. Tyler Davis was talked about as like, is he going to be a top 5 pick someday? Is he going to be the future?
Like, is there seriously a 4-round difference between Ororo from Clemson and Tyler Davis?
Not to me. And when you're talking about upside, I like Davis's upside better, because if he can reach that freshman level All-American that we saw, like especially playing next to guys, like he doesn't have to be the focal point. He's not necessarily going to be eating doubles all day long.
And if nothing else, broad shoulders, he's a big body to put at the 0 tech. Like there's a process. So actually I want to talk about this one a little more. But first, shout out to DNVR events, man. Yes, Nuggets and Avs, the run has ended, but there's still a ton of great events going on all summer here at DNVR, starting with the 2nd annual Midsummer Open Classic Tournament at Broken T. DNVR pairing with our guys at Big Drive Energy. J-Mike was there last time. Just a great time to hang out, get to meet some people, have some fun. Of course, play some golf, maybe sip on a couple cold ones. There's a lot of fun times. It's the Midsummer Open Broken T Golf Course for an 8 a.m. shotgun start. It's a 4-person scramble, and it's brought to you by Circa Resorts and Casino Toyota, Breckenridge Brewery, and Shady Raids. Head to thednvr.com where you can see our whole event schedule. We've also got a great Broncos road trip to Tampa Bay that we just launched. Go check that out online.
Tampa, we're coming.
Dude, Tampa, North Florida.
Tampa's
different,
nice.
Dog. Different.
Tampa's nice. I very publicly hate Orlando.
Let's go.
Tampa's nice.
I'm an Orlando guy. I might hate Tampa. We're going to find out.
Not the best selling point for our trip to Tampa.
No. You got to come with me. Let's make some opinions about Tampa. Todd Davis, Zach Stevens. I got to find a way to get RK out there. And, of course, Big Hankster. He might have left us on the pod today because he's Dove out. Apparently, it's more important to hear what
Hank's big time, man.
Coaches and players have to say than us grading the draft a month and a half after it. And then awesome Rockies takeover going on. Join Susie Hunter and the DNVR crew and other diehards. We've got a Phillies
Sweet,
game
baby.
with a suite booked at Coors May 26th rather. So this weekend, still some tickets left. We've actually sold quite a few. It's a great deal with suites and stuff. It's going to be a really fun time. And then check out the takeovers all summer long. We've got some fun Rapids events. And you can always come to the DNVR bar. You can book some fantasy drafts. Lots of fun. We're doing a college football fantasy draft.
Let's do it.
I don't care if it's you, me, and like some bots. Jake's already bowed out.
Why?
Jake's so weak, man. He's so weak. He's over there.
Jake missed the show today, so make sure you guys troll him in the comments.
Troll him openly, please.
Repeatedly.
No, he wants to come on and share his opinion.
Oh, thanks for showing up, Jake. Thanks for blessing us with your privilege. Sit down and shut up. This is our show.
That's right. That's right. You can hear our criticism of you and have zero response.
No, I'm just kicking him because he's down and defenseless right now, so I'm taking advantage of the moment.
But no, just a solid, responsible draft from the Rams. After Blake Corum, they also get Cameron Kitchens, who is seen as one of the top safeties in the entire class. He runs a slow 40, so they're able to get him in the late 3rd.
I think you might play him down more around the box anyways.
Also, it's like reliable last lines of defense have proven you don't need a 4-4.
Not if you're in good positioning and have corners.
Yeah. And then Brennan Jackson, dude. He was very high on my list. The edge rusher from Washington
Wazoo,
State.
yeah.
He just gets after the quarterback. He's
Well,
similar to Jared Verse.
Wazoo
Great
kind of
value.
flew under the radar this year because they had kind of a down year from what they expected. But
Well,
like,
they were ranked until they
Yeah.
blew it, and I lost a bunch of money on it.
there was some NFL talent on that team though. Edge out wide in the corners and receivers. I mean, they got a couple of decent guys.
And then Bo Leamer, the center from Arkansas, SEC chops, and a very, very good showing at the Senior Bowl. I think we came away extremely impressed. So top to bottom, this is a front office who, like the Broncos front office, has been dealing with not a lot of picks the last several years. And they drafted hungry, man. Like
You
they've
could
been
tell this
watching
was
other
they've been
teams,
watching
yes.
college football for a
Yes.
couple of years.
Yeah.
Like when 2024 gets here, we back up.
Totally, bro.
And now they're back up. So
Totally.
I just loved what they did, man. I just thought they didn't get too cute. And I think it's really easy to get too cute when you're in that position. You're trying to maximize this window with the
Great
veteran
point.
quarterback.
Great point.
Get positions of value. Go get yourself an edge rusher. Go get yourself some interior defensive linemen to make up for this Hall of Fame player. Obviously, you're not, like we said, you're not going to be able to go one for one. It's the money ball approach.
Yep.
But I think they put themselves in position to be, right there as one of the top two teams. I still think San Fran would be my favorite in the NFC West, but I think they're right there, like with Seattle. I mean,
Yeah.
and I like them better than Seattle.
And reports pre and post draft that this might have been a landing spot for Bo Nix had he dropped there. So, keeping their options open, looking at, as you mentioned, veteran quarterback. Well, can we upgrade? Can we find other options, but not pigeonholing themselves either? I'm going to go negative one last time, and then we can dwell on the positives a bit more. Tennessee Titans, it felt like, wow, is this an identity draft? They just said, we're taking the biggest dudes in this entire class, back-to-back, O-line, D-line. We're just leaning in. Give me J.C. Latham, the big road grading right tackle from Alabama, probably the best run blocker in this entire class.
6'6", 342. He's a big boy.
Big boy, dude. And then, you thought that was big? Watch this. While the defensive tackle run is happening in the early second round, they go to Vondre Sweat, the nose tackle out of Texas, the guy that midway through the season, I felt like I was the only one saying, man, number 90, Byron Murphy from Texas, I think he might be the better future pro at defensive tackle in Texas. Everyone else is talking about Tavondre Sweat. Like,
Shoot, he
my
had an Old
God,
Spice
how good.
commercial.
Like, he did. He did Kuiper at him in the first round at some point. Then he tests poorly, which, like, when you're over 365, you're not going to test well, man. We talk
Just
about
how it goes. Watch him on the football field.
athletes, right? Like, that goes the other way too. Like, 360 just ain't supposed to run in the low fives.
No,
That's-
you're a tank.
Yes. Bigger factor though is the DUI, right? And in this grading portion of your life, the biggest, most intense interview period of your life, where you're facing 8-7 figures on the line for you, and you blow it with something like a DUI, terrible. It shows some really bad off the field decision making. And look, it's not the end all be all. Randy Gregory had some positive drug tests same period in his draft process.
Look, man, kids
Dak Prescott
they
got
make
a
dumb
DUI.
decisions. Like
They
it
do make
happens.
dumb
It's not
decisions.
necessarily gonna be what defines his career.
And far be it for us to judge, who also have make dumb decisions. But look,
I'm the king.
It hurt his eval, man. There's no going around it.
Well, I've also never had millions of dollars on the line to be a first round pick.
Damn straight.
So I would like to think that, you want to know what? I'll get an Uber tonight.
And all that said, this kind of is the high end range of where I would have projected Sweat to go had that DUI never even occurred.
Yeah, we were talking about him, I think a couple months ago, and we're like, I don't know if I'd take him like before the third at this point.
And Latham, I get it. 7th overall, though,
It's rich.
high.
Well, and with who was still on the board, there are better pass blocking tackles.
That's the thing, man. With Latham, I will never get that final 4th down in overtime against Michigan out of my head.
Yeah.
Where they're designing it to run behind him and he gets beat on the inside shoulder. That's part of what breaks it up, drives Milroe to run left.
It was pretty weird.
They're not able to convert
seeing
it.
Bama just get worked in the trenches by Texas and Michigan.
Brother, that's the other thing.
They were awesome against Georgia. I mean, they flipped a switch in that SEC title game. And
By the end of the season, they'd grown to be a great O-line. Early tape, they're not a great O-line. And his pass pro is part of that.
It's a one-score game against South Florida. I'm watching that game in the press box in Boulder waiting for the showdown because that was a late start. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, man, it's going to be a long year in Tuscaloosa.
It's crazy as I don't hate the Titans' rest of the draft. Actually, Cedric Gray, higher rated linebacker, great weak side, sideline to sideline coverage backer. In the early fourth, great pick. Brownlee, the undersized corner from Louisville, who was phenomenal in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. Awesome pick. James Williams, a box safety from Miami, who Hank was high on. Great pick in the 7th. Harrell, edge rusher, maybe some off-ball linebacker out of Michigan. Great pick. Jaquan Jackson, wide receiver out of Tulane, early 6th. Maybe a smidge of a reach, but he's like a speedy playmaking wide receiver, returner. Good pick. Like the rest of the draft is fine. I just hate that process of the early picks. And this is like an organization who just does not strike me as having learned their lessons.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, let's go back to being positive.
I like it. Let's talk about DUIs.
I just act like an insane person, and then I'm like, okay, happy thoughts again.
Yeah, I like what Detroit did. I going out and getting a couple of corners for a team that couldn't stop anybody. I love adding Terry and Arnold to that Dan Campbell mindset.
24th overall, great value. I mean, reportedly, Arnold got a call after the draft from the Raiders who told him they decided between him and Bowers with a coin flip at the 12th overall pick. So
to land him at 24.
First off, like,
should you admit those things publicly? Millions.
North of $5 million.
It's a lot.
Going from 12 to 24. How the fuck do you share that, man?
That's what I'm saying. That's the other thing. If I'm the Raider, why would you admit that publicly? If Arnold goes on to be like an all-pro corner and Bowers takes a couple of years, which tight ends typically tend to do, that quote is going to be on a lot of graphics.
Yeah. No doubt. No.
What'd you think about Indy and getting Latu at 15? They also got Adonai Mitchell, who I think with Anthony Richardson, that's what they needed. It feels like forever.
Yeah.
The Colts were kind of trying to like sign those fringe free agent receivers and like
great value pick there. With getting Latu, Adonai Mitchell, that's two of my favorite.
Those are two of my best value picks, I think.
Right. I thought they got maybe a tad too cute later on in the draft, but it's very Coltsy. It's like size speed guys. From Power 5 programs. They've built a decent team that way. I thought they could have maybe leaned into a bit more, building that offense up. Adonai Mitchell, they're talking about him as like he's going to be their X wide receiver. I think that's a lot of pressure on a rookie right off the bat. But
and him in particular, I think he's better suited to be that kind of Robin, not necessarily Batman, but at least early on.
And going back to Detroit, Arnold's a great value pick. They move up just a smidge to get him at 24. Ennis Rakestraw could have easily gone late first. Goes late second, the Missouri cornerback who played opposite Chris Abrams-Drain. Phenomenal pick. Then the 4th, they get a little cute. They drafted Giovanni Manu, offensive tackle, super toolsy out of Canada. In the late 4th, they trade a future 3rd for that pick.
I love the international prospects.
Dude, I love that too. And then Sione Vaki, box safety out of Utah, played a couple games at running back. They're talking about him as a running back prospect for them. Bless you, by the way.
Would they want to put him back on offense?
Yes. That they're saying he showed, first off, in high school, he backed up Najee Harris as a junior, moves schools as a senior, goes off. Great receiving stats above all. Utah last year, they had some guys missing. Yep. So he plays a couple games, goes off against Cal.
He did. I mean, he was productive.
And they've talked about, like, we saw a lot of promise in a guy that was able to show that kind of output and production at the Power 5 level without really having trained that way. And we're leaning into that. So again, you're going to look like a genius if it hits, an idiot if it doesn't. The Broncos the last several years have really made me appreciate draft classes that are able to make the best out of not having a top pick. And I thought the way the Carolina Panthers and a few other front offices that fit this bill, like the Cleveland Browns, did a really nice job. The Panthers move up just a smidge to get Xavier Legette with the last pick of the first.
Finally get Bryce Young somebody to throw the football to.
Get him some weapons. And then Jonathan Brooks to pair in his backfield. The Texas running back who, look, had he tested, who knows? Maybe he runs a 4.55 and he drops to the third. Maybe he runs a 4.4 and is like actually a pick in the 20s. Like Jonathan Brooks had some really nice upside. Great combination of size, speed, vision, elusiveness. And then I think there's some untapped upside as a receiver as well. Texas running backs have been all the rage the last couple years.
Well, and I would have liked to have seen Carolina get an offensive tackle, but with where you're at, with not having that first-round pick because of the trade.
That's exactly right.
I'd like what they did. You had to get some form of making Bryce Young better. You either needed to get him weapons or protections.
Exactly.
And with where you're at, it's probably going to be weapons. So they.
And then Jatavian Sanders, one of my favorites, kind of my guy as the second tight end. Great move tight end. He's one pick ahead of Troy Franklin, the very first pick of
I don't know how either of those dudes fell to day 3.
I don't either, man. But to add those weapons to this offense, I thought was just massive. And the Cleveland Browns, Michael Hall, I thought could have slipped into the late first. He's so much upside for that tremendous interior pass rusher out of Ohio State. He stays at home. He's one of the younger prospects in the draft, and he's the guy who took over that Notre Dame game, right?
Yeah, basically single-handedly.
Dominant. And I mean, as far as interior pass rushers in this class, it was him, Fisk, and Murphy, man. I mean, with Johnny Newton in that mix. And then Zach Zinter, the right guard out of Michigan, one of the best offensive linemen in the entire country. If he doesn't get injured midway through the Ohio State game, I think he would have had a first-round grade for me.
He's a top 50 pick. I feel confidently in saying
Totally,
that.
man. So like, two guys who I wouldn't have blinked an eye if they went in the late first, and you get them without a first-round pick in the late second and late third. I think that's great process. That's one where I am willing to give you praise for just going best player available, right? Because the odds were stacked against you to make that happen, and you do it. And defensive tackle was one of your biggest needs, and you're adding that to a defense that was already extremely promising. So I see the vision. I see the process at a high level there.
I don't have any more in terms of teams without a first-round pick. I did like what the Bengals did, though, getting Amarius Mims. You know, you don't have to trade up to get yourself an offensive tackle. Then you're able to get Jermaine Burton in the third, who feels like a perfect fit for Burrow, and that, you know, those deep balls, just throw it up, let him go get
Chris
it.
Jenkins is fantastic.
Yeah, you had some depth in the trenches there. So
yeah.
I just feel like they got better. They did a good job of, without having a top 15 pick, adding some guys that are going to make an immediate impact for you. And, you know, again, like these
Big
margins,
time,
you got to take advantage of when you have these quarterbacks.
Absolutely. And a ton of day 3 value for them. Josh Newton, we're talking about him as a potential top 50 corner for TCU, has the size. He drops all the way to the 5th. You snatch him up. Tanner McLachlan, McClellan, the tight end out of Arizona, has tested tremendously well. Getting him in the 6th when all the tight ends were kind of going off the board by that point. Cedric Johnson, very productive career as a pass rusher for Ole Miss. You get him in the late 6th. I don't have his testing figures, very nice class.
He would have gone a little earlier, I would have thought, because he was impactful in some big games for them.
Totally. Houston Texans without a first-round pick, I thought did a really nice job. Kamir Lester was a guy I'm high on, the corner out of Georgia. Maybe doesn't have those tippy-top, high-end, shutdown corner traits, but a guy at a premium position who I think will have a long career as a pro, was kind of seasoned in the SEC and a really high-end defense that's produced some really high-end DBs. And then Blake Fisher, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. He's playing opposite Joel, obviously at right tackle, highly touted. You get him in the late second when guys were starting to go off the board. So they just went with highly touted, big programs. It's Georgia, Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State are their first 4 picks. Kalen Bullock was a guy I was higher on than just about anyone. The deep safety for USC, very rangy as a free safety.
Covers a ton of ground.
You're right. And Kate Stover, Ohio State connection with C.J. Stroud, getting that 3-down tight end in the 4th, I thought was really good. So
they're going to need to run the ball.
Yes, they are. And you got Joe Milton and Dominic Pierce.
I like it.
Yeah. Final one I'll give praise to is Green Bay. Jordan Morgan is such a great system fit. The left tackle from Arizona. The one knock was, aside from arm length, is this guy just doesn't create push off the line, right? I see him great in a zone blocking scheme. I don't see him at all in a power scheme. Well, he goes to a zone blocking scheme that's lost its left tackle and David Bakhtiari to start just about every season for the very long time. And then you knock out just solid future pros. Edgerrin Cooper, who in this 3-4 defense, you can move around, can be off ball, can get after the quarterback. Javon Bullard, great safety from Georgia. And Marshawn Lloyd, who in this system I think fits really nice. Zone blocking running back with big upside from USC. They're able to get great value in Kellen King. Remember when we were talking about him as a guy to watch as a first-round corner from Penn State?
Talked about as like a top 5 corner coming into the year.
And he's got size. Okay, he ran a 4.6. You'd rather a 4.5. But it's not like, oh no, never mind. Like,
he didn't run a 4.9.
Yeah,
like,
what'd you think? Exactly. So no. Evan Williams, one of our guys, former Fresno State guy.
Evan Williams.
Safety from Oregon.
Really physical.
Good
ball skills.
Bullard Williams as your safeties.
That's
phenomenal.
Good value, too.
So, pick you felt vindicated by? Do you want to touch on that before we wrap this all up?
I mean, I've already said it a million times, but like I feel like I was higher on Quinyon Mitchell before the masses were. Him being corner 1 was pretty validating. I just felt like more than one individual pick. I felt like we were really spot on in terms of where the value in this year's draft was and which positions were going to be prioritized and when. Like, I feel like we had a really good read of it's going to be the quarterbacks. Yeah. And then we're going to have this little run on skill positions. It's not going to be a defensive draft, but there will be a defensive run.
Honestly, more so than other years.
Yeah, it was very, very just, if you had been paying attention over the last year, I felt like this draft was just kind of very validating in general.
I feel like the transfer portal has given us a little more clarity.
Well, just some of these guys, we've watched them for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's not like trying to project off of this breakout freshman year where he didn't really, truly like pop until November. And it's like that 1 month was amazing.
And I'm also not guessing on like, how will he look on a second and third chance? A lot of these guys are getting that. They're getting different systems. They're getting different opportunities. So, no, it really fits. Honestly, pick I felt most vindicated by Ben Sinnott going mid-second. So vindicated by it, I honestly think it was a reach. I'm higher on him than anyone else, and I was like, you guys might have reached.
It have been like me,
like
if Mo had somehow gone like late first round, early second round, I'd have been like, I love him, but I don't know about that.
And so interesting. I love that you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. This is a draft that made me wonder, boy, is the G5 guys that are going higher are the former G5 guys that transferred.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that becomes more of a trend.
Well, I think you're going to see it next year. It'll be the Ashton Gianti coming out of Boise, Torrey Horton, like.
But those are not transfers.
No, but like they could have been, or they could have. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, but the Brandon Fisk, the Jared versus the guys who came from lower level and transferred were the guys who got the love. So it's interesting. We love this stuff. We'll be back next week. As always, leave us a thumbs up on the way out. Thank you to all of you for participating in the Toyota chat. I think it's finally time we get into the 2025 class.
I think the time is good. We should have full crew back again. And
I think we're doing it. So there you go. Have a great weekend. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.